I'm Rachel Jankovic. I have 4 young daughters myself. I am excited about teenage girls because the future that all of these young women who love the Lord have is so exciting and encouraging. I am excited about the potential in the church to multiply good works, to multiply the kingdom, and to raise up families in the Lord. We're raising them in this world that is so distracting to young women and so bent on taking them away from all of the wonderful work that they could be doing and concentrating on tons of pitfalls of selfishness and introspection and self-service. I'm so excited to see today for the first time my new book, No Time to Be Dumb, Letters to Teenage Girls. This book is a casual discussion between me and imaginary teenage girls about what it means to be a Christian woman, hoping to capture their love and imagination for the work that God has laid out for them. I hope that you and the young ladies in your life will enjoy this book, No Time to Be Dumb.
So welcome to another episode of Doug and Friends, or as my grandson just said walking through here, Doug in the Longhouse.
It's his favorite place to be.
It's my favorite place. I'm here with my wife Nancy and with my 2 daughters, Becca and Rachel. And our starting point for our discussion is Rachel has a new book out, No Time to Be Dumb, which we're going to begin our conversation by talking about that, where we talk about, now that the book is published, we offer suggestions about what should have been in it.
Oh, perfect.
If only you'd consulted me.
If only we'd talked in advance.
If only we talked in advance. So, Rachel, isn't it hurtful to intimate that girls might have to be told not to be dumb?
Okay, first of all, you could take this title in more than one way. You could say, this is no time to be dumb. This is a time, which I do think that. And also, you don't have time to be dumb, which is also true. Both ways is true. The real goal of that title was to communicate that this is not, I don't think it's a harsh book at all, but it is not chicken soup for the teenage soul either. And that the title is supposed to communicate that I want to respect young women enough to talk with them frankly about things and not assume that they can't handle things like saying, I would still say to my kids, I'm sorry, I was being dumb about. Dumb to me is not a wild insult.
It's true that apparently it is very insulting because many people have rushed out and become insulted.
They have been, but that to me is more interesting that they actually, it's interesting because they don't even know what I'm talking about. But the thing that bothers them is, I just think it's funny. If you're really invested in keeping girls dumb, something's wrong with your program. If that's what you want.
Well, you're not talking about IQ level.
No, I don't think they think that either.
Morally,
they think
foolish, silly.
Right, but the people who are upset about it know
Yeah.
vaguely what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They're just upset that you would. I actually think it's a weird mashup of Rousseau and feminism that girls are innately innocent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That young girls and when you say something like don't be dumb having dumb crushes. They're like, how dare you say that something that just spontaneously occurs in young girls could be dumb when it's because of Rousseau and that noble
natural.
savage.
Yeah,
it's like, this is actually pure,
I actually
innocent,
think
young, beautiful.
the whole noble savage thing, there is a complete version of that is the noble savage women. It's like somehow keeping them uneducated, keeping them, that keeps them more pure, sort of.
And I think it's a feminist thing because at least it's a gynocentric kind of because it's never paralleled with teenage boys are naturally innocent. People are not thinking.
Nobody would ever make that mistake.
Today is not, but they do think, and they encourage girls to act as though they are naturally innocent, that what they think of. And
where do you see that?
In responses to things, like if you're saying you should not have, like we had a podcast episode talking about book boyfriends, crushes on imaginary characters.
Right.
The amount of defensiveness around if girls want to have bizarre crushes on Mr. Darcy, they should, is weird. It's like, why do we think that that's
So let's back up for a minute and just frame this. The target audience for this book is what age range roughly?
Well, it says on the cover, teen girls. It's for teenage girls. My own daughters, at the time, at least when I started writing it, were from 19 to 15 or something. And I would not, if I had an 11-year-old daughter, I would probably not be rounding her up to this. But I also don't, I would say writing this was a little bit tricky because you don't want to introduce a lot of big sin problems to young teenage girls. But I felt like it is more dangerous to act like that isn't a that isn't a reality, or that your friends couldn't be struggling with it. Like, it's worse to not know, but also not recognize it in yourself, or know that you're having a problem with this and then think that you're the only one. This isn't like, I do think that this is something that comes up a lot with teenagers. Christian parents rightly want to shelter them. They don't want them exposed to horrible sin. But the world is spending a lot of advertising money on advertising sin to your children. What they're never doing is advertising the consequences of it. So what we end up with is Christian parents not talking about realities while the world is advertising the fake version with no consequences.
Right.
And I just think it's an important balance that Christian parents not be afraid to say those sorority girls are actually miserable.
So what's the structure of the book? Is it
letters
to one girl or a group of girls?
It's an imaginary group of girls having sort of, I suppose, a not really a Bible study, but a get together of girls having questions and discussion back and forth.
Right.
And your Aunt Lizzie?
Yes, not really an aunt, a friend. It's like
but it's a friendly
connection. Yes, it is friendly. It is affectionate. It is absolutely the way that I would talk to my own daughters. And I will say, it was hard. My own daughters are not a great judge of, because I would say, read this. Do you think, is this too much? And they would be like, but it's true. I was like, yes, but do you think it's saying it a little too harshly? And they're like, no. Not at all. I mean, it's really...
Lay it on thick, Mom.
And it was funny because I was like, well, it's good that none of the things I'm saying in here surprised my own daughters, but at the same time, I have them, but they're not necessarily a good sample group of how it will.
Would you say it's
everyone.
fair? You two have a podcast that reaches a lot of women. Nancy, you have a podcast that reaches a lot of women. Would you say that one of the fundamental assumptions in the modern evangelical world is that women don't sin? Not that, for example, generic sins that either sex could commit, like if you're a bookkeeper, a woman could embezzle money and a man could embezzle money. Everybody agrees with that. But there seems to be an assumption that there's no distinctively feminine sins. There are human sins that everybody can commit. There are masculine sins, but there are no feminine sins. If you're addressing,
I think everyone would think that there are, but we don't dare to go there.
Right.
Because I think it's a thing that people are aware of it, but they're so afraid of it because it is a venomous situation if you go there. That's where the rattlesnakes are nesting.
Right.
Well, also
Nothing
because
happening
our
over
culture's flaunting sin just openly with no consequences. So it seems like how rude of you to make fun of that or to say that was bad. Or be looking at some of the women in our Congress and think they're bad. There's some bad
Some bad ladies
bad
in there.
girls in there, but no one wants to.
But what this does is effectively leaves women without pastoring. And then when things start to wobble, they say, well, let's get a women's ministry leader in here because the women need pastoring. But then that just down the wormhole we go.
So have you seen I don't know I don't know her name, but it's a very funny clip of a relay race where she attacks the other girl with the baton.
She smacked her over the head with the baton.
They're like running and a girl is passing her and it is manifestly, she's just like mad. She's whatever.
No.
It's outrageously funny. I don't actually know. I would think it was college, but I don't know. I don't know what age it is. It's a very funny clip where it's like, you did not just start wailing on someone passing you. Well, she was charged with assault after it took a little time, but she was charged with assault and held a rally for herself, crying. She's the victim. And I was like, this is actually very funny, because this is, you're dealing here with people who are a victim in the sense that she's a victim of her own sin and her own inability to see it or control it or whatever. She's crying at this rally saying, I'm not this kind of a person. I would never do that. And it's like, there's a lot of video footage of you
doing that,
beating that girl with the baton as she passed you. And she's like, my arm got caught. You can't see it from that angle. The only thing I could do, I didn't mean to hit her at all. But I mean, it's so funny. It's so clear in the video. And the thing that I just felt like, this is an example. What you're saying, that female sins are, I mean, they really are just a thing we don't talk about, but it's the worst when we don't talk about them to girls who are going to have to be dealing with them, because all that's going to happen is they'll be eaten alive by it. They don't recognize it.
In a weird sense, they are victims.
Yes,
they're victims of bad teaching, bad parenting, bad pastoring, bad
role models.
Bad role models.
And thinking the only way to feel better is to assign the blame to other people, to like because they're desperate to feel better, to get right, like they're tangled up in this. And if the only way to try to get out of your sin is to say, I'm actually wonderful,
right,
it's not going to be a good time for you. Like, you're going to have a hard, bad time.
It's the foolish woman in Proverbs.
Yeah, tearing her house down with her own hands
and her life, and sometimes
and
everyone in the proximity,
everyone who's nearby,
just passing by.
Yeah.
So the book has been out, what, a week or so?
And just a hot minute, not long.
A hot minute. What's the? You can't have had reaction from people who've read it yet, but has there been quite a reaction?
The only real reaction that I have seen has been,
It's so hard to like be on the opposite side though, to be like, no, it is time to be dumb. We want girls to be dumb. Rachel, stop telling girls not to be dumb.
I have seen some.
It's a very odd position to hold.
I've seen some things, but I haven't been watching real closely.
I've seen some
either.
real hilarious ones.
I think there are some AI generated images of me with a basket full of bread and this book in it and a whip and all the
and a grumpy face with hiking boots on. So it looks a lot like Rachel.
And grumpy face. I'm just really keeping the women in the church in bondage and slavery with my suggestions of not being dumb. It doesn't make sense. The reality is, it doesn't make sense.
Being dumb is liberty. Being dumb is our freedom.
It is
and I
hard.
think, and it's so funny because the title, No Time to Be Dumb, and people saying, I pray your daughters will not be impacted by this. It's like, what? I mean, you could say, I don't like what you think dumb is. Like, you could engage with it in a way that's like, you're calling dumb what I think is something.
What are some of the things you call dumb in there?
Well, okay, this is one of the things that the people who are really on the attack about, I think, would not know what to do with were they to actually read it. But but they're not going
that
to.
Might damage their argument.
Whatever.
So.
It doesn't matter. But one of the things that I do, and I've always made a point of this with my own girls, this is something that we talk about, is things like not letting boys impose on you, not letting someone make you uncomfortable enough that you won't just make him uncomfortable. And that this is a really common problem for girls, and it starts in what I would absolutely say is what the world would call microaggressions. That's a very real thing, even though I think it's ridiculous to act like you're a victim of a murder when someone microaggresses against you. I do actually believe that girls need to have a really high-powered radar around when someone is manipulating them or trying to make them go along with something they didn't mean to do. And the kinds of examples that I've used in here, or I've used with girls in real life, as things like a guy taking a drink out of your drink without asking, just helping himself to something when you didn't mean to share your coffee with him. But now
picking up your chapstick,
or sitting too close to you, like coming and sitting down right next to you on the couch, where it's all of a sudden a girl's very natural instinct is to think, I have to make this not awkward. I have to act like
I have to take
Like I took the
responsibility.
burden
Yeah.
of the social awkwardness. So a guy that I never wanted to share a drink with just took a sip of my coffee. And girls will freeze up and think, I just have to act natural, which is foolish because he should feel very awkward for
Or
having done
to
that.
use another word, dumb.
Yes. Yeah, but the thing is it's a natural instinct in girls, and it's one that will get you into a lot of trouble.
But it's
like
imposing,
and it
and
gets you
it's-
into the kind of trouble that, like, I know I'm not saying, let me explain how the world is full of microaggressive guys, but it is. That's what it is full of. And guys, like with teen girls in this, like I think a very natural state between the sexes is guys liking to make a girl uncomfortable and enjoying their power in that. Like, and it does not, I don't mean by that some kind of huge villainy. I think it is just the
Right.
nature of.
But if you just get into the habit of letting guys make
Do
you
that.
uncomfortable and you just go with it,
Totally.
and then they make you uncomfortable. Like
a
you are
guy
being
comes and
moved.
makes a comment about your body that surprises you that he made, but you decide I'll be normal about it and I'll act like this is how I always do things. That's the problem, is that he's moving your standards, moving your boundaries in places that you never meant for it to go, and you shouldn't have. So there's at least one of the chapters in there is about being the person who makes it awkward. Like if a guy sits too close to you, get up and say, I'm sorry, did I take your seat? Like if he takes your coffee from you, just be like, you can keep it now. Like, let him be the thief. Like, let him feel clumsy for having done that.
Yeah.
But
So-
don't you just accommodate.
That's a great example. Are most of these examples guy-girl related, or some of them, half of them?
Dad, you're just honing in on what's probably going to make people the maddest in my whole book. And I don't even know that you've read it. You just put in you're just like, I sense that within this book. Okay. Yes, that is. What I was going to say is, so that's a thing that I would think that any feminist actually ought to be on my side.
Yeah.
That women should
course.
not be imposed on by men.
But every Christian
Where
should be on
Christian,
your side.
where Christians will get probably angry, I presume, is in me telling girls to keep their hands to themselves amongst each other. That they should not be holding hands, sitting on each other's laps, petting each other's hair, hugging all the time.
Neck rubs.
Yes, we should just mind your own lane and keep your own body to yourself is my hot tip.
And that does make, weirdly, Christians ultra mad when you say that. But one time, I think it was a Grace Agenda, maybe. It was some kind of a big gathering here in Moscow with loads of people, so it could have been anybody. But I remember talking to some high school kids that I was teaching, and they were like, we went, and there were these two lesbians, and they were just all over each other. And we were like, oh my word, I think they're like staging a protest, like inside the church. Like, I think that they're just doing that. Then come to find out, no, it's just two Christian girls who are spending the whole time just petting each other's hair and like, but like it literally
I'm
looked
just
like
gonna say it.
lesbians
I'll say it.
staging a protest.
You don't have time to be dumb like that. You should get your hands out of someone else's hair. Just don't do it.
And they just were, but they were like, super physical, petty, arm around each other. Strange.
Just to be clear, it's okay for a girl to do a girl's hair if you're in a salon.
I actually
not
think,
during a talk.
Okay,
Maybe
we could
not
just
then.
go like, if your friend broke her fingers and she's really having trouble with her ponytail, step in, help a girl out. I don't mind anything like that. What we're talking about is a strange kind of emotional entanglement that includes a physical relationship. And I would say the emotional entanglement is a problem.
Right.
The oversharing, the way too much, that's a problem.
But it also makes everyone around uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yes, or if it doesn't, it ought to. That's
Well,
the
apparently it did at that
Yeah.
thing.
But it's just like, honestly, it's
weird.
decorum.
It's not just
You
that
know,
though, because I actually think that this is there's some statistic that I don't know right now, which is great that I bring it up, but of how many people just come out of college alcoholics and the percentage of people that go just party drink and pull out of it without it having ruined their whole life, in the sense that that was the time in my life when I was partying and we were drinking a lot. But in that same time, there is a percentage of people who are coming into a lifetime enslavement.
Get stuck there.
Yeah,
Right.
and that there are some behaviors, and this is one that I would say there could be a group of sweet Christian girls who are just too handsy with each other. And for whatever percentage of them, 85, 90% of them, it might not ever mean anything to them.
And they think they're being
And
Anna Green Gables.
they're like,
and
this is
Diana.
how I'm just being friendly and I'm being supportive and it didn't mean anything and I actually didn't get any weird problems going on. I just always sat on a friend's lap where I was like, I haven't seen you in so long since yesterday. I give you a really big hug and we'll just snuggle for a long time, or like, let's get in this blanket together to watch this romantic comedy. There's a lot of that kind of thing is
It's
like,
just unwise.
it's dumb.
At the best.
Dumb.
It's unwise.
It's at the
dumb.
right, but many girls
But you-
participated in that
Right.
with it never meaning anything.
Right.
And so when you bring it up, that for some girls this is actually a fatal.
Snare.
Yes, you have done something awful to them, and when you bring that up, I think it offends everyone. Partly because a huge percentage of girls who have participated in this
Well, they
are
never
not
thought of
lesbians,
it.
never thought of it sexually,
Right.
never.
I have outraged some young unsuspecting girls because they thought I was accusing them
Of being a
something, and
lesbian,
it was
yeah.
just like, let's just be ladylike.
Yeah.
Just keep your
Yeah.
hands to yourself.
Yeah.
So, slight direction change, although it may not be ultimately. I'd like to get Becca's and then Nancy's and then Rachel's, your individual take on this. I'd ask you to identify what's going on. I was flying out of Pullman one time, and ahead of me in the security line was one of our college's volleyball teams or basketball team. I forget a girls. It was girls volleyball or girls basketball, and there were like a line of girl athletes ahead of me in the security line, and about 6 or 7 of the people ahead of me had a stuffed animal in their backpack, right? Stuffed animal, stuffed animal, stuffed animal, stuffed animal. And these were girls in college. And I was thinking, okay, it's one thing if, in your dorm room you have, a memento of when you were a little kid or something. Let's not be, but they're going on a.
Let's not be too judgy.
Let's
But there's no excuse for this.
let's budget for some weird thing. But this seemed to me to be girls that were so insecure that they couldn't spend a night away from home or 2 nights away from home without having their teddy bear.
So I think that there's something bigger and weirder going on with it because it is trendy to do it. So there's plenty of, I've seen the same thing in airports, like big floppy stuffed animals too, not just like, here's my little Sylvanian I brought. It's like, no, I came with this giant plush
No matter
thing.
the size, it's weird.
It's weird. And so it is trendy. So I think some of it is like not just one person with a weird, like they never got rid of their security blanket, but it is like a broader thing. And I think also I was in some store, I don't remember where there was this huge section of like Hello Kitty products, but they were not little kid products. They were like face masks and
Anti-wrinkle cream.
Yeah, anti-wrinkle cream.
Hello
that's
Kitty.
Hello Kitty. And I feel like Ben said something that was profound about it because I was telling him it's the weirdest. I don't understand what's happening with this. And it wasn't just Hello Kitty either. It was a lot of just like little kid stuff. And he was saying, well, there's always that sort of the mother who's trying to sort of relive her own childhood vicariously through her daughters somehow, like there's that. And he said, but these are women who didn't never have daughters. So it's like they're just, I don't know, like it's people who are killing their own children, refusing to ever have children, but then they're grabbing onto this very little kid thing.
And then I saw my first commercial the other day of dog food for like pet parents.
Yeah.
Like people are
Yeah.
subbing
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
You don't
dogs
have a
and
pet,
cats.
Dad. You should walk
Yeah.
into PetSmart sometime because it's a scary trip.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
this way, because it's all pet parents. It's all
So this is not having kids, people are transferring maternal instincts
have to-
to
I
pets
have to bring
and then
this
to
up.
stuffed animals.
Just needs to be said. 'Cause
but it's a wider trend, but it does feel like there's this strange.
It's a weird insecurity.
Yeah.
A friend and her husband went to a baseball game in Seattle with a new baby, and she had the new baby in a baby carrier with a hat on with the pom-pom on the top. And a woman came up to her and she said, "Is it a poodle?" Like trying to look at the infant carrier, and she was like, "It's my daughter. Like it's a human. I mean, like what is happening?"
Yeah.
And the funny and the weird element there is that I think the woman was more interested in it being a poodle. If it's a child, I'm not really here to see it. But if it's a poodle, I'm here for it.
Right.
Yeah, same. There was a girl who in Seattle, but missed a ferry and was like, "Oh no, I have to get home to my babies." And the person next to her said, "Oh, you have dogs?" And she was like, "No, like just actual human babies."
Yeah.
And so I do think that
That's like a culture-wide.
it's like
broody
grabbing
hen
onto something that's
phenomena.
kind of infantilizing, but also in this strange hatred of children. So I think it's not just like, "Oh, I needed my teddy bear because that's what I had when I was little." I think it's actually more sinister than that.
It's a desire to be maternal. And Seattle has more dogs than children, has for years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they're catering to the animals and, all the pet
So-
accessories.
So a little bit ago, a little bit upstream, I made a comment about women's ministries being not a great idea, or at least the way they're usually conducted.
Yeah.
What would you say is the problem with the way women's ministries are usually conducted, and how do we try to conduct them here?
Well, what do you mean by women's ministry? Because
I
it's a
mean,
big
well,
category. Like, what kind are you talking about?
I would say that this is me answering my own question, but I would say most women's ministries are women ministering to women. And what we're trying to do is have women shoulder to shoulder ministering to the body.
Outward.
Outward.
Yeah, right.
But that seems like a simple distinction, but I think there are depths there.
Well, I encountered many years ago, the kind of women's ministry where there's a conference and it's like a big slumber party. And all these women stay up way too late and talk.
Overshare.
Say way
Yes.
too much.
And I was invited to speak at one of those. And you and the kids were there. You stayed in a little cabin or something. Anyway, they all stayed up way late. I was in my own little space. And my first talk in the morning was, I think, about respect your husbands. And
Hitting
everyone
it hard right out of the
just
box.
looked. And I was going into the nitty-gritty of things.
About
like
when you tell your
sharing
friends.
things and
Yeah.
Stand up now if you did not do this last night.
they looked so miserable. And I realized next time that's the first talk before everyone goes to the slumber party. But that's the kind of ministry, we never had that kind here.
Right.
We had college groups back in the day that would go on like retreats and things, but they were pretty Bible-centric.
Right.
And
Yeah.
there wasn't time for
I
all
had
that.
one time something that I didn't go to when I was volunteering at a Christian ministry. And these older women, I was 18, I was young, and I was fired from that volunteer position. So that
Yes.
tells you something. But these older women all had a retreat. And I was trying to be very respectful, but one of them came to me and she was like, "Oh, Rachel, we were so sad you couldn't come on our retreat. Like we were able to just sit around and really share with each other about how our husbands are not meeting our needs."
It's a
And I was like,
unifying bond.
Oh, wow. What a shame that I couldn't be there as an 18-year-old who would have been like,
What I missed out on.
"Who's gonna stop them?"
But I think you're talking about like the difference between women's ministries that treat all the like Christian women of the church like they are the needy buckets, like they're the
Yes.
the kind of the sad people who we need to gather
Right.
around.
We
and
are the
need to
victim of our own
hold them up.
difficulties, and the
we need
church serves to help us.
Yeah, and it's like I think it can turn. Well, I think this is broadly true of the whole congregation, but women probably especially. they're like consumers of the church. So it's like they want to leave bad Yelp reviews about they weren't meeting my needs. Nobody was friendly
Right.
enough. They didn't have us over. They didn't, it's like that you judge it like you showed up to be served. And I don't feel like they served me appropriately, instead of seeing yourself as part of the body that is there to serve. So that's sort of this distinction on the women's ministry side of things that we have
Now,
here.
just to have to put a disclaimer here. It's not November. We'll qualify this. This is not to say that a woman in a terrible situation who is needy,
Yes, yeah.
who has legitimate, she's hurting. Of course, the church should minister to her. But it seems to me that we've set up an industry of assuming that everybody's a needy bucket.
Yeah.
And then we get more and more of what we're subsidizing.
Yeah. Well, because, there could be a man who shows up who's a basket case and needs to be ministered to and rally around and whatever. And the same could be true of the woman. But it seems like we treat all the women as a class, as the people that need to be rallied around,
baby.
as if they're the ones that just need encouragement, instead of helping them to see that if they're not that critical case, they should be looking around for who is and how
I
to.
would say one of the things that we have done here, because I'm on our Ladies Fellowship Committee, which is essentially the women's ministry of our church, but we would differentiate between being a ministry of women or a ministry to women. Really, the interesting part is that the one is both. That being a ministry to the church, that's women working together to do things, is actually a radical encouragement to the women doing it.
Right.
And so it's not like we decide to not encourage the women. It's that it is a different form of encouragement.
You decided to do something that's actually encouraging.
Yes, and it really is, because one of the things and of course, again, we're not talking about the ICU situations. We're talking about just normal life with women needing to behave like Christians. That working together for the good of the church is something that strengthens women and encourages them. It gives them a ton of joy and fellowship and camaraderie. But another hazard, I think, to women's ministries proper is that sometimes when they think we're going to be really theologically on it, like we're not going to do any of this slipshod, random book group, which happens in a lot of places. Women really are it really is a place where a lot happens in a church, because someone brings in a bad book and the women's ministry goes hog wild for something terrible. And then by the time anyone else finds out about it, it's too late. Like it's in the lymph nodes. We've lost. However, some churches are like, we're going to be all Bible, all whatever. And then what they do is they take the most qualified women in the church and turn them into female pastors for the women. Because then we're having groups that is commentaries, studies on this. We're working, we have our ladies group. We're line by lining our way through Job, and we're hammering out doing whatever. And then the problem that happens there, and I did talk to a woman who is a very faithful woman who had started a very big very Bible-centric ministry with women. And this was the thing that she said was her biggest regret. She said that we took the women who should have been serving in their homes, should have been doing, showing hospitality, doing women's work, and made them the female pastors for the women in the church, which then meant that all the women only come to the women pastors for counsel, which meant that the worship becomes less relevant to the women than their private women's church. And you've kind of made it like the ministry of the word is by women to women.
Well,
and
there's a funny
the men are not needed there.
With the Titus 2 stuff. I feel like people take that all kinds of funny directions, but one is where they do all get together, study the Greek, go through the commentaries, hash it out in every direction except for the part where they do it, where the older women teach the younger women
to do it,
how to do the things. Like they sit around talking about how they're supposed to do that, but they don't do that.
I had a
the conservative ones sit around talking about
Yes.
how
Yes.
they should do it.
Yes.
But then it drifts left inexorably.
Yeah.
And pretty soon that's not what we're supposed to be
The
doing at
women
all.
don't need
Yeah, but there's a
don't
lot
need
of
the
there's
pastor anymore, or
Yeah.
the worship.
I had a very funny, lived out parable of this at a conference where
I was speaking at the conference, and they are like, you can set up your own booth to sell your own books or whatever, which I don't do. So I didn't want to do that. Nothing sounded worse than that, in fact. So I was like, no, but we'll take the space and we'll do the Bible reading challenge, because that's something I care a lot about, something I'm like, we should absolutely encourage people to be reading their Bible. So this is a ministry of the women in our church, is the Bible reading challenge. And we say we're not teaching the Bible, but we're trying to teach a love of the Bible. Like, we're trying to help women get into the word. We're not being like, let me exposit this for you. We're saying, tell me why you're not listening while you're brushing your teeth in the morning. If you're, when people are like, I'm starving, I'm not listening to my Bible, not reading, whatever. So we're very scrappy. Let me help you get this done in your life. It is very Titus 2 in that sense. But here I was with my friend Sarah Mortimer at a table with all of the Bible reading display. It was all about read your Bible. We like to read our Bible. Let's read our Bible. And across the hallway was a display of a book that was about I don't even know the title of it, but it was about Titus 2, and it was like the 12 mandates of Titus 2. And I think there were probably graphs and charts and a lot of stuff. It was a real let's diagram the sentence of Titus 2. And there was this hilarious moment where a couple came up to our table with the Bible reading, and she's like whispering, because we weren't really the cool kids at this conference. We were kind of the not cool kids at the conference. And she kind of whispers, but she said, I just wanted to tell you, I made a pie. And her husband goes, and we're like, here we are at the Bible. Read your Bible, make a pie. And across the hall is this whole exhibit on Titus 2, and it literally no pies, but it literally turned into, I remember getting the giggles, because here's my friend Sarah talking through some pastry trouble with this girl. She's like, you're gonna roll it. She's like, roll it, talking about how she picks up the pie crust. It was like, you're gonna roll it onto the rolling pin. And it's like, over the Bible reading plans, this is actually a very natural conversation. Not natural at all around the diagrammed exhibit with laser points of what is Titus 2 telling us to do.
Didn't you cause a commotion somewhere somehow?
It was the same time.
About what's your favorite book, it
was specifically most influential
book.
Most influential book that you've read. And it was just because you knew it was not. This was a cerebral group. This was a group that liked to keep it in the brain. This crowd was that way.
Did you say sourdough or something?
I said tartine, the tartine bread cookbook. And I did say first.
I didn't even know the story.
I did clarify that it was not, that's rude to say what's the most influential book, because it's like saying what was your best conversation you ever had or something. It's I mean, there's a lot. But I was like, this one is really, and that one was so funny, because when I said the tartine bread cookbook, it was like half the crowd probably who listened to what have you. You saw people go like, and then there was quite a bit of like it was like half of us are mad, half of us are like,
the other half thought it should have been Matthew Henry.
Yes, well, it was definitely no, because I think it was people were saying things like attributes of God.
Oh yeah.
It's not things that are not good. It's just that it's actually not primarily what we're supposed to have the women be doing.
Yeah. Okay. So one thing is we're approaching our landing here, but I've heard rumbles that there's a women's event of some sort coming up.
Oh yeah, here.
Yeah,
yes.
Here. What is
rumbles?
Rumbles. What's going? Nobody tells me anything. So
you have to come here to the Longhouse.
I was going to say the rumbles in the Longhouse.
Yes.
We're actually doing because
what are the women up to now?
Troublemakers that we are. We're doing all kinds of trouble.
What's the next event?
We have it's essentially a mini conference here, but that's because Moscow has hosted for years a lot of conferences, primarily to people that come from outside. This is one that's just for our own women, and although we will be filming it so that it can be
shared.
Yes, but the goal of it is actually to be kind of more of I would say Moscow mood, kind of what are we actually to kind of an orientation, kind of a tuning together. Like if we really mean to be building culture and we really want to be working together but apart all the time. There's a lot of newer women here. It's kind of a how to join in on that, but also
why are we doing what we're doing? Sometimes it's helpful. If you come from a very different church background and you come here, one of the most frequently commented on things is everyone's very busy and the women are not sitting around just talking a lot. And that it can be hard for people who come from a very different expectation of what community is like to come to grips with actually we say community and what we mean is we worship together and we wave at each other as we run through Winco. And we're like, hope you have a fun time. And everybody's like busy running to sporting events or different things. It's a lot happening.
Yeah.
And the goal of this conference is actually to orient people to a number, like what are actual distinctives of what we care about and why do we care about those things and how can we press on. So I would say it's both a descriptive of what our community is already in some ways. And
The women's side of the community?
yes.
Yeah.
And well, some of it's clearly both like worship centric.
Right.
But descriptive and also ambitious in the sense of like already, not yet. These are the things that you can say already the women are this way in our community, and you can say we're not yet there where we're.
Nancy, could you talk a little bit about the quilts that the ladies make for?
Well, the baby quilts?
Yeah.
Well, guess who's doing that?
She's done some.
But
Yeah,
I've helped a little bit.
Yeah.
Well,
Becca made the labels.
that's
I've roped everyone in. She did.
so.
Becca snorts.
Okay, but
I don't know why she snorts because she really did.
But truth be told, Becca makes labels for everything.
That's true.
You can't. She must be put under
That's true.
interdict,
That's true.
under
How did
under
she
an
make the
interdict
labels?
to keep her from
Because we
making
had them
labels.
printed. We had the
Oh,
baptism
okay.
church printed on fabric.
Well,
She did that for us.
This Rachel, you got the quilting thing started. It
was again
her
back to
baby.
my friend Sarah
It was
Mortimer and
her
I who
baby.
said, how do we have so many domestically competent women in our church, but we don't really have quilters? Like we don't really have a.
Turns
And
out
we
there
joke
are more
about
of them.
be the old ladies you want to see in the church. Like we're gonna have to do it. We're gonna have to become the baby quilters, and so it's.
So we're no farther. We're no closer to finding out what
So
what these
I
baby
mean,
quilts are.
Has it not
She can
explained
tell you.
itself?
So she got some ladies together who wanted to make baby quilts, and they do it regularly
For whom?
for
Okay, every baby
each
baptized,
baby.
every baby that's baptized at our church now, we give them a quilt with Becca's custom label.
The label.
It's on the back, it's the fabric label that has the
It's
baptism
a big label.
charge
It's
Yeah,
like
it's
this
like
big
this
on
big.
it,
and it
So-
has the baptismal charge on it.
Yes,
the one
and
we stand
the
and-
little child for you,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ came to this earth. That one, and we have that. But what we do is we make all the blocks. Lots of these ladies that are doing this had no prior quilting experience. It has been a let us see what we can become.
Right.
So we make a bunch of blocks, and then we'll get together and swap them all around, lay out the tops, make them, bring them back. We didn't give any away until we had 20 of them done, and now we're right
So
on pace.
every time a baby's baptized,
They can pick from we have a website of all of the photos of them. They can pick which one they would like.
And they have girl quilts and they have boy quilts.
Yeah, we're not gender neutral. They're one or the other. These are clearly one or the other.
It's great.
But the thing that actually I would say this is a unique thing about women. I think women are like this everywhere, but I know the women here well, and we really went from being like, I wonder if we could, like, let's see if we could do this. Do you think we could make that many baby quilts? And we started doing that, to it being like, I think we're almost ready for our own quilt show, because everybody who started doing that is like, I'm going to make one for my daughter and I'm going to make one for my niece. And they're all branching out and doing things where it's like, oh my word, I saw this beautiful thing I had to try. And here's this. And it is amazing what grows in the soil of women faithfully just working. Like it really is that
But I
magic
think-
of like stick a bare twig in it and out
But
comes.
that's why, like, I think when
Tons.
Paul says older women teach the younger women to do these things, it does take off like that, and culture is shaped by it. But he could have given us a checklist of like older women, make sure the younger
Right.
women are doing
Know how to
X, Y, and
quilt
Z.
these
But I think it's really interesting that it's almost like he defers
just-
to their expertise. He
Yeah.
doesn't tell them
Right.
exactly what they have to
that's
do.
because although an apostle, he doesn't know.
I know, but it's kind of like, you know what, you ladies can handle this, because it's like
But
the
it
older
is-
women
but-
should be
and this is
able to do
it
it.
happens all the time with women because women are relational and they also enjoy this kind of work. And I feel like
Yes.
this is a thing
bringing it back to this book that I think
it's
is in here, where I'm
Truth,
saying
beauty, and goodness.
we have
It's just all right
totally,
there.
but we have a culture that's really cheapened the domestic arts into thinking if you like it, if it's leisure. So if you try it and you don't like it, you should not bother with it because you're wasting your time, you're wasting your money. And my point is that these are actually skills. It's not like if you're learning a language, you say, if you don't like that word, discard it from your arsenal of things that you might need to communicate sometime. And that you don't need to be, say, someone who's obsessed with icing flowers to be someone who can express love through making a cake for a child. Like the skill
You don't have
gives
to
you
turn
something.
it into your career.
It doesn't have to
It's
be
just
like, I'm
dabbling
actually,
and lots of
if I
things.
had a spare minute, I actually don't like decorating cakes very much. So like, that's not something I would ever do just because I had a spare minute. But in terms of skills, I want to keep building through time so that you're able to do what you meant to do when you want to do it. It's a completely different world when you're thinking of it in terms of skills. Like, can you bless people with these things?
So, quilts for the babies that we just baptized is a good place to wrap this up. I'll just say
we've
to
made
all
like 50
to
by
all
now.
of our Baptist viewers, I'll just repurpose something I said to James White one time. We present a baby that's freshly baptized with a quilt with a baptismal charge on the corner made by the ladies of the church. And the question you need to ask yourself is, don't you think that's cute? So,
Of course it is. Of course it is.
Enough said.
enough said. So thank you for being here with me in the Longhouse.
And Doug and friends talking about baby quilts. Who saw that coming?
That's right.
Nobody.
I
Nobody
was
saw
not
that coming.
prepared for that.